his clothing. And as you say, there are some Jews that actually tear their clothing, but we don't have to do that. And especially if we want to preserve our clothing, it's okay. And actually, most do wear just the ribbon here, and we tear the ribbon is symbolic of that our hearts are torn. And so I ask you to repeat these words after me. Baruch, Atah, Adonai, Eloheinu, Melech, Haolam, Dayan, Ha'emet. It means, blessed are you, God, you're the true judge. That's literal. I like to think of you as God. We don't always know the ways in which you work. In fact, we don't always know where you are. You're kind of a mystery to us sometimes. And life hits us very strangely sometimes. I don't understand the work that goes into what you do. But we hold on to these traditions and we hold on to these rituals at this time. And so the actual ribbons are self-tearing. You could do it just from the bottom yourself, or I can do it for you. Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah. It's a hard angle. The tradition is to wear them for 7 days through the period of Shiva. Shiva just comes from the word Sheva, which means 7. You can wear it as long as you'd like. Some people take those 7 days off, which is a long amount of time for work or whatever. Some people wear it to work, so whatever you feel comfortable. And if you change your clothing, let's say you can just remove the ribbon, put it on the new clothing, okay? I think we're going to get started with this.
Okay.
So,
going to have those that are going to act as pallbearers. If you'll come over to the hearse at this time, please. Center yourself over the grave. We'll kind of walk with you. Stay right with the casket. All right. Stop. Lower with your knees if you can. And then I'll ask you to remove your gloves and place them below the star there, please. Here we'll have the immediate family have seats. The family and friends, come on up under the tent, please, everybody. Let's get you out of the elements as best we can. There, you got some cottage books for me. What do you want? Cottage?
hold on to it and say it at the end.
I have recorded.
Oh, yeah,
I will do. Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen.
In the words of Ecclesiastes, the season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking, a time for losing. The time of mourning is a complicated time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Howard's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. I invite you to join with me in the recitation of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. Guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Before we continue today, I wanted to invite one of Howard's grandchildren, Andrew, who wants to share a few words on the family's behalf.
So I just was going to write something, but I thought it was almost appropriate to say this off the cuff. Pop-up meant so much to all of us, and I just have so many memories, and I'll just share a few of them. Some of them funny, like such when Ben and I were young, and both denied coloring underneath the stairs at Emma and Pop-Pop's house, and we both looked at each other. I didn't do it. No, I didn't do it. No, he did it. And but to this day, it's still, in the moment, it was one of those, we're getting in trouble, but now looking back is a funny and fond memory. One of my other memories is waking up every time I visit to Pop-Up, always doing crossword puzzles and Sudoku puzzles, and always working his mind. And I'd get up there, and Emma would make us breakfast, and I just talked to him about all kinds of things and life and his career and where I wanted to go in my life, and him sharing his past and his memories, I think really helped guide me as into the man I am today, and help guide my father into teaching me to be the man I am today. And I think we'll all look back on Pop-Pop's life and be so thankful for that, what he shared with us. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Andrew. I also know it's so very meaningful to your dad that the three of you are here today to comfort him, as well as your mourning and your own grief. Share a reading with you. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream to be and oh to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. Saul Howard Shipotofsky loved building radio-controlled model airplanes, and not the kind that came prefabricated and ready out of the box to go. Howard ordered those kits that required an incredible amount of focus and work. He was so committed to this hobby that even belonged to an affinity group of radio-controlled devotees who would geek out on their common interest. And while Howard may have crashed many an airplane, the fun was in the planning, it was in the gluing, it was in the building, and the physics of it all. As Andrew mentioned, he was a person of intellect, of the mind. He was a man who maintained an active inner life, and in the process his outer life brought great joy to so many, most importantly to his family. Howard was born and raised in Bayonne, New Jersey, the grandson of Jewish Ukrainian immigrants, son to Irving and Ann, brother to Susan, who he eulogized not so long ago. He'll be reunited with her today. Irving, his dad, died when Howard was only 13 years old, and throughout his life he remembered how a relative told him at that time, "You are the guy. You have to care for your mother and sister now." Taking on that burden could not have been easy, but Howard followed through as a loving son, a loving brother, for the entirety of his life. And after he graduated from Bayonne High School in 1951, he attended the University of Rhode Island and then enrolled in the Army, serving stateside. And afterwards studied chemistry at Kansas State University. I found it was Kansas State. In their graduate program, eventually earning a PhD. Howard was published there, as evidenced by his work in nuclear science. After a thorough Google search, I found an article entitled "Gas Chromatographic Analysis of Some Volatile Phosphorus Compounds." Not exactly sure what that means, but it sounds really good and really smart. I figured in Google there was only one Saul Howard Shipotofsky who went to Kansas State and who published, and who was a chemist and published that. I think the odds are that that was really him. Howard was later hired as a chemist by Procter & Gamble and made his way to Cincinnati, Ohio. Most importantly, Howard had his eye on an attractive lab technician named Ingrid, who would become his wife for nearly 60 years. Ingrid remembers how she and Howard were as opposite as you could get. She was a lover of nature, easily sociable and extroverted. Howard kept to himself more, somewhat of a homebody, but had the gumption to ask the beautiful immigrant from Estonia if she would like to go out on a date. Ingrid was intrigued, and the clincher might have been his eyes that drew her in. They picnicked amongst the trees in nature, a memory Ingrid holds dear. And about 1 month later, they were engaged. While the two couldn't have come from more distinct backgrounds, Howard's family was so welcoming and loving towards you, Ingrid. Howard, like many Jews of his generation, grew up somewhat traditional, observing Shabbat and the holidays. And even though he was not as ritually rooted as an adult, he always maintained his connection to his faith. And hence, that's why Karina contacted me. She wanted to honor her dad in that way. In fact, when he and Ingrid began a family in Wappingers Falls, New York, precipitated by a job opportunity with Texaco, where he worked for the bulk of his career, he joined a temple there, and Karina even attended religious school for a bit. Ingrid, for her part, strove to keep up with lighting the candles, preparing Jewish festival foods, and making Passover, simply being an honorary Jew in the family for sure. As a couple, they shared a robust social life, driven primarily by Ingrid with dinners, gatherings with lots of friends. Their fascinating story and backgrounds naturally oriented Howard and Ingrid towards others with worldly global connections. As a result, Mark and Karina likened their home to a veritable United Nations. And while Howard may have been the introvert, he could easily entertain with his silly puns, his goofy sense of humor, which Karina deemed as similar to the comedy of Seinfeld sometimes. And you just might find the plastic cockroach in your food if you weren't careful. I'm seeing some knowing glances and eyes rolling right now. These kinds of hijinks brought Howard much joy. I don't know if it brought anybody else much joy, but it brought him joy. There were family trips to Florida and abroad to Sweden and Estonia to visit your family, Ingrid, for whom Howard held a great amount of affection. He loved your family, and you loved his. A couple of years ago, I had the honor of meeting Howard at the residence in Broadview Heights. He was kind, he was sweet, and it was clear to me just how much he was loved by Karina and Ingrid. Just a few days ago, I got to talk to you, Mark, who mentioned how much he admired and loved his dad. And just a month ago, you came to town to visit Howard yourself, and you shared a special father-son time together. How very, very precious. It is also clear that you are so supported right now by your kids, Andrew, Janelle, and Jordan, who knew their grandfather as Pop-Pop. Benjamin, who's under the weather, know is here in spirit, and look forward to watching the video afterwards. You know, on one of those trips to Florida, Mark remembers watching one of the shuttle launches from afar with Howard. They couldn't see all that much, but Mark mentioned from the distance you could see the glowing fire indicating liftoff. But what could be better than one's son taking delight in sharing that moment with his dad? In his own way, Howard was always looking to take flight, with an active inner world and a sharp mind that allowed him to go just about anywhere. Think about the things he studied and practiced in his life, otherworldly. otherworldly, reserved for certain minds that can take him to places unknown. We are all launched today into a new chapter of life, a new chapter without him on this earth. As sick as he was, there is a difference between when one declines and the finality of one's death. But we know his memory is never far behind. He leaves it with all of you. You carry it with him. We honor him today and his loved ones, who will surely hold him dear in their hearts. In Jewish tradition, when we bury someone, we bury the body in which they inhabited all these years. That body, hopefully we can live a long life in it, and we wear it out, and then we give it back to the earth from whence it came. But we can't bury the spirit, the thing that animated Howard and made him who he was. That doesn't go down there, and that's not covered by the soil. Come visit him whenever you want, but you can also leave the cemetery and take him with you. That's why we light the Shiva candle at home, which the funeral home has hopefully given you. When you get home, there's a tall candle, and it burns approximately for 7 days. And that flame is indicative of his spirit that will remain buoyant forever, so long as we remember and we continue to tell the stories and we continue to laugh about his goofy sense of humor and his jokes. And of course, we feel the warmth of the love he gave us all. Zichrono livracha. May Howard's name be an enduring blessing. And let us say, Amen. I'm going to invite you to pause for a moment as we consider the gifts he brought and the piece of the puzzle that he helped complete in you. Just pause for a moment. I invite you to please rise for the memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Amsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Bemalot Kedoshim Mutorim, Kezohar Rakim Mazirim, Et Nishmat Shaul Ben Irving Van Shalach leolamo began Eden tehei menuchato ana bala rachamim astirehu beseter knafecha leolamim utror bitror achaim et nishmato Adonai unachalato V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar Amen. El Malei Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Saul Howard Shipotofsky, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. We now turn to the Kaddish praise, the mourner's Kaddish. You each should have a card in your hands. You can follow along the Hebrew or the transliteration. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divrach hirute v'yamlich malchute. Bechaye chon uvyome chon. Uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'galau vizman kari v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam elomei omayah. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitdaleh v'yitdalal shemei dekudesha. Brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn, comfort to all who are bereaved, and we say together, Amen. As we turn to our conclusion of our service, we now continue with the filling in of the earth. As I shared with family just the other day, this is a custom of really taking care of our loved one. It seems sometimes for folks that it could appear disrespectful, but in Judaism it's the opposite. When we throw the soil in, it's our way of starting the process of burial. We don't want to leave our loved one exposed for too long. So we start that process, and then the folks here at the cemetery will finish the job. So if you're comfortable with it, we invite each one of you to take a shovelful or two and put it into the grave, and then you could just place the shovel back in the wheelbarrow. It's kind of a mixed moment, because when we put the soil in, it represents that closure and finality. But in Judaism, we don't want to also feel too eager to bury our loved ones. So that's why we place it back into the wheelbarrow instead of handing it to the next person, as a way of kind of saying reluctantly, we are now moving to this next phase. So we invite Ingrid and Mark and Karina to begin, and then everyone else is welcome to do it too.
Do you want to cast a flower into this? I may, like to put one more shovel of flour in for those that couldn't be here with you and those that have gone before.
I want to thank family again for letting me into your lives for this moment. It is an honor for me to know Howard through you and through your words and through your memories. It's a real privilege to be here at a place I know we all don't want to be, but you have paid great tribute to him. May his memory forever be a blessing. Grateful to Kirk. Thank you for taking care of the family, as always, and grateful to the folks here at the cemetery who will bury him with respect and honor. May his memory be a blessing. Amen.
Poor lady. Those are not, or
Thanks.
pet food.
We did not get here until 3 in the morning.
This is going to be,
Traffic delays.
yeah, it's going to be a process.
3 in the.
I'm not